Do you know that I actually remember the last time I ever got terribly lost? It would have been when my daughters were in elementary age, and one of them was playing soccer, and so I had the job of getting her to the soccer field. I lived in Orlando. We were driving to Geneva, which is very country, and somewhere along the way, I missed a turn, and I was terribly lost. And we had left in plenty of time, but I had no idea where I was, and my daughter in the back seat was falling apart, crying and saying, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make it to the game, and this is so her life was just turning upside down, and she was falling apart, and my stress is like way up here, and I'm on the phone with Gary, and he's got a map opened up, and he's trying to help me get on the right place so we can still make it to the game. And I remember the feeling, in fact, as I talk about it, I can start to feel the stress rise because it was such a distinct memory. And then that Christmas, Gary bought me, I think it was a Garmin, was they're called. It was a GPS for my car, and my life changed. And my perspective has never been the same. I'm not afraid to drive anywhere because I love GPS. Now, I tell you that because of the perspective change, that this could no longer be an issue. During the month of August, we have been reading out of Ecclesiastes. And really, I want you to understand is that the goal of Ecclesiastes is to shift our perspective. The author has a clear goal, a motivation from God to give us a different perspective about life. Ecclesiastes is called wisdom literature, and that's what the wisdom literature is created for, is to shift us, to change the way we normally think. And so I want us to think about, like right now, what are the things that we think about? What does the world tell us is what we base our success on, right? What's our perspective on life? Well, generally our perspective on life is youth, it's beauty, it's success, it's career, it is personal happiness. Isn't that what we want for our kids? But the book of Ecclesiastes is different than that. The book of Ecclesiastes is challenging us to, instead about thinking about life based on success and career, that we should base our life on thinking about dying, of all things. And even further than that, life after death. So the author of Ecclesiastes is challenging us to say, if you think about those things, you actually will have a better life here on earth. So we're going to try to talk a little bit about that today, but we're going to read today. This is our final week in Ecclesiastes, and we're going to read out of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 11, and I'd like you to hear these words. Now, the first word is send, and it could be send or cast. I kind of like cast better, but this tradition says send. Send your bread out on the water, because in the course of time, you may find it again. Give a portion to 7 people or even to 8. You don't know what disaster may come upon the land. If clouds fill up, they will empty out the rain on the earth. If a tree falls, whether it's to the south or to the north, whether it falls, there it will lie. Those who watch the wind blow and never sow, and those who observe the clouds will never reap. Just as you don't understand what the life breath does in the fetus inside a pregnant woman's womb, so you can't understand the work of God that makes everything happen. Scatter your seed in the morning, and in the evening, don't be idle, because you don't know which will succeed, this one or that, or whether both will be equally good. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Okay, so as I've said, the goal of our author is to change and challenge the way we think. It is asking us to focus on things that we don't normally focus on. Now, if I were to say to all of you, there's things in life that you can't know. Everybody in here would agree with me, right? So what do? We tend to think about the things that we do know, the things that we can count on. That's what we look at in life. We look at, and in fact, we try to expand that by planning and preparation, because we want as many things that we can count on to be true, right? But the author is actually asking us to spend some time thinking about what we can't know. So I want to tell you some things that you can't know. And here's the reason why. The author is saying, look at the things that we know from the perspective of the things we don't know. I'm gonna kind of lay that out for you, because that's kind of hard to think that way. But you're thinking again, the things you know from the perspective of what you can't know. And so, because when you think in terms of uncertainties, it will shape the way you think, and it will shift your perspective. Now, I got 3 things I want to share with you, and they're all 3 things that are sort of unknowable. You don't know about these things. And this is true of all of us, and none of you will be surprised by any of this because you already know these 3 truths. But I'm just going to point them out. It's what this passage is talking about. The first one we know is that we cannot predict the future. We cannot do that. We're all really comfortable with knowing that. And we especially know that because we live in Florida, right? So what do we got possibly coming on Tuesday? Who knows? It may be a tropical storm. Maybe it might be a hurricane. But we are Floridians, and we get this, right? You can look at the signs, and you can plan well because of the signs. You can actually do that, and that's what we do. We buy our batteries, and we get extra water and whatever else, and if we need to evacuate, we evacuate because we can look at the signs, and we can say, this is what could happen. But the reality is, we cannot know if that hurricane is going to turn, right? We don't know that until it turns. I mean, that's what happened last year with Fort Myers. It was horrible. No one expected it to shift and devastate that region. You see, in life, there are things we can't predict. We can look at the signs. We can try to have a handle on it all, but we cannot know. There's just some truth about that. There's certain things in life that you cannot know. The second thing is that we do not know how to do that which only God can do. Now, I know and believe deeply in science. Science is a gift from God. And we use science to try to figure out life, right? And think about how much we know now than what we knew 2,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, 20 years ago. We know so much more. We're so much more knowledgeable. But that doesn't mean we know everything. Some things only God knows. We don't know who is going to live a long life and who's going to live a short life. We can't know that. We don't know why chemo works for some people and for some people it doesn't. There's these unknowable things in life. When I was in seminary, there was a young boy straight out of college. I was older, but he was like 22. And he was going to go to seminary to become a pastor. And he got up one morning. We were all living in Kentucky, going to a school in Kentucky. And he went to one of the state parks, which were beautiful there. They were mountainous and gorgeous. And he went to the state park for his morning time with the Lord. I mean, he went for his devotion time. And sometime in that morning, he stood a little too close to a ledge, and it collapsed underneath him, and he fell to his death. How does that happen? That makes no sense. Here's a guy who's called to be a preacher, to share the goodness of Jesus Christ, and during his devotion, no less, he leaves this earth. I mean, that messes with you. It doesn't make sense. And that's a reality in life. There are things that cannot be explained, things that we cannot know that only God knows. In fact, in the book of Job, we have Job. He's the guy in the Old Testament who had it all, wealth, family, you name it. And then one day he had nothing. And he cried out to God, and he's like, seriously, why? That's what we all do, right? Why? Why us? Why did that happen? And God responds to Job, and he says in Job 38, in your lifetime have you commanded the morning, informed the dawn of its place? Where's the road to the place where light dwells? Darkness, where is it located? Can you take it to its territory? Do you know the paths to its house? Can you issue an order to the clouds so that their abundant waters cover you? Can you send lightning so that it goes and then says to you, I'm here? Of course not. God is reminding Job that there are some things you can't know. Some things we can't understand. Some things we won't like. That is part of our life experience. Not all things are knowable. And then the third thing is, the last thing is, we do not know how to guarantee success and avoid failure. And this is probably one of the hardest ones because we all work towards success. I don't know of anybody who works towards failure. We all work towards success, right? It's what we put our money in. We plan and we save and we go to school and we figure out what our retirement should like. We plan for success. It is a goal that we all have, but there's no guarantee. There absolutely is no guarantee. Now, some people have a safety net because they have a family who can back them up, but a lot of people don't. And when they fail big. And that's something we just can't guarantee, that everything's going to succeed. Absolutely. So there's three things here that we all can probably agree on that we can't know. We can't predict the future. We can't know what only God knows. And we can't fully avoid failure. We can't. Those are three things we cannot know. Now, I want you to take that understanding and apply it to your present life and what you do know. Okay? So I want you to have this perspective of what you can't predict. Now apply it to what you do know in your life, because there are some things we do know. So, the first one. Since we know that there is much that we cannot control, first we should practice wise living, meaning sitting loose to life and its possessions. What does that mean? All right, in that first passage, the first verse, it says, send or cast. I like cast because that's so beautiful. Cast your bread upon the waters. Give to 7, give a portion to 7 or to 8. Now, there's a lot of debate about what this means. I'll be really honest with you. A lot of theologians kind of disagree, but where most people land, it has something to do with generosity. We are told to be generous. Cast your bread on the waters. Be generous with what you have. Because we know that we cannot hold on to everything. We need to be generous with what we have, what we're secure about, because we don't know how much time we have. We need to be willing to be generous in where we're secure. We can't control the future, but we can control now what we have. And wherever you have excess is where you are called to be generous. But that's hard for us to do. We like to hoard, right? We like to hold on to the things we have because we don't know what the future holds. I mean, how many in here can honestly say you have some clothes that you haven't been able to fit into in years, but they are still hanging in your closet? Because someday you might get thin enough that you could wear them again. When in reality, there's a bunch of other people out there who aren't tiny right now who could fit in your clothes if you share them. We tend to hold on to what we have because I may need that someday. And the problem is that we become hoarders. That's not what this passage is teaching us. It's teaching us to give it away. Wherever you are secure, if you think you're going to have enough clothes in the future, you need to give away the old ones. You give out of your generosity. You give out of where you are secure. And that can be your clothing. That can mean your time. It can mean so many things. You don't want to hold on to those things. You want to just cast them. I love that. Just see, cast it. Give it away. Be free of that stuff you do not need. That's what God is calling to live like, to be this super generous people. In Luke, there's a story by Jesus. It's a parable. It says, these are Jesus' words. And then he told them a parable. A certain rich man produced a bountiful crop. He said to himself, what will I do? I have no place to store my harvest. And then he thought, here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. And that's where I'll store all my grains and goods. And I'll say to myself, you've stored up plenty of goods, enough for several years. Take it easy, eat, drink, enjoy yourself. But God said to him, fool, Tonight you will die. No, who will get the things you have prepared for yourself? That is the way it will be for those who hoard things for themselves and aren't rich towards God. That's what we're called to do. And I will with mercy say it's harder for some people than others. I know that. But if it's hard for you, you need to be praying about that and ask God to help you. Don't hold tightly. Secondly, wise living means that neither success nor failure is ultimate. It's not guaranteed, all of us. In fact, you're going to fail at something. I promise you, it may not look like it, but every one of us in this room have failed at something. We are all failures. It is not the ultimate to fail. So your failure should not be steering your life. You should understand that you can't control failure sometimes. It just happens. And when you understand that, then you don't let failure rule you. You know, sometimes we get so caught up by the fear of failure that we live in fear of it. Like it paralyzes us. I know of people who lost someone they loved dearly. And they said, oh, I can never marry again. No way, no way. We have the best marriage. I'm never going to marry again. I know of people who have experienced divorce and thought, I am never taking that risk again. I know people who have had animals die. That was the best dog in the world. I will never be able to replace him. We live with this fear and we hold on tight and we decide we're never going to let ourselves live because we're so afraid of failure. But that's not what we're called to be or to do. We're called to live these very rich lives where we're not afraid. Of course, something was really good once, but something can be really good again. We should not be paralyzed and unable to move forward because of a loss or a failure. Failure happens to everybody. But we're still called to generosity, to living and enjoying the things of life. We're not called to live in the failure, because failure happens to everybody. 2 Corinthians 9:6 says, what I mean is this, the one who sows a small number of seeds will also reap a small crop. And the one who sows a generous amount of seeds will also reap a generous crop. Think about it. Are you living just like this? Or are you throwing the seeds with great hopes and dreams that an abundant harvest can come? Don't stay here. Be abundant because God's given us a life, an abundant life to live. We know we can fail. Fine, accept that. It doesn't mean we stop sowing and then reaping. Finally, since we can't predict the future, finally, wise living is his own reward. You know, we can't predict the future. We can't do what only God can do, and we can't guarantee success and avoid failure. So we should be living like life is a gift to us. Whatever time we have left, we should live like it is a gift. And what do we do with a gift? Think about your children. What if you gave your children a gift and then they put it in a drawer? You would be so frustrated. You want them to enjoy this gift. That's what God gives to us. He gives us this gift of life. Yes, heartache comes, change comes, things are difficult, but we still have life. God still gives us breath, and so we should live into that. I saw a quote this week, and I related to it far too well. The quote said, inside every old person is a young person wondering what happened. Right? Don't we all get that way? Like, I don't know how I got to 60 so quickly. I don't feel like that inside. My body feels like on the outside some days, but generally I don't feel that old. So I should not have a perspective like, oh, I've only got maybe 20 years to go. That is ridiculous. I have lots of years of abundant life ahead of me. And that's how we should live, because every single day that I have, and even if it's just one more week, every day should be understood as a gift from God. Absolutely. And so what do I do with that gift of God? I give it away abundantly. If you have time, and you never had time, but now you have time, you better give that time away to somebody. If you have means that you feel relatively secure, you've planned your future, and you're okay, but you still have extra, you need to give that away to somebody. We need to live these abundant lives, and we need to take chances, and we need to risk losing, and we need to get rid of the clothes that are too small in our closet. Because life is worth living, and it's a gift, and we should never, ever forget that. Because here's what you can count on. God created this world for us, and he will help us in all that we encounter on the journey. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.